In this story, I will be comparing and contrasting two authors, Laurel Croza and Kate DiCamillo. The books that I am comparing and contrasting by them are of the realistic fiction genre. Stories in this genre include anything that could realistically happen, and they help children navigate through some pretty tough life events. And they have realistic characters that any child could relate to. Laurel Croza is the author of 3 works in total: I Know Here, From There to Here, and Whirlpool. All 3 of her books are in the genre of realistic fiction. As a child, Laurel moved 9 times and attended 6 schools before she was 14. Her experiences inspired her first book, I Know Here, illustrated by Matt James. Laurel currently lives with her family in Toronto, Canada. I will be discussing all 3 realistic fiction books that Laurel has written: I Know Here, From There to Here, and The Whirlpool. Her books are best suited for children aged roughly 6 to 11 years old. I Know Here is Laurel's first book and her most successful one. It won the Boston Globe Horn Book Award as well as the Ezra Jack Keats New Writer Award. It's a story about a girl and her family moving from rural Canada to Toronto. The girl in the story has a lot of doubts about moving. From There to Here is the sequel to I Know Here. From There to Here is about the girl's new life living in Toronto and how different it is from her old home. The Whirlpool is a book of short stories written by Laurel Croza. The stories are intended for an older audience, and I will be discussing the story It's a Step from this short story book. It's a Step is the very emotional story of a mother and a daughter escaping from the girl's controlling father. In I Know Here, the targeted audience is children ages 6 to 8. The author does a great job of reaching this audience, and the story is not overly complicated. The children reading this book would be able to easily identify with the main character's fears and anxieties about moving to a completely new environment. The author uses simple words in her story, such as this passage here. It reads, I count the trailers on the other side of the road. There are 10. A fox lives in a cage behind one of them. I know the fox's damp fur smell before I see him. She also uses very descriptive language, such as in this passage here. It reads, I follow my brother kicking the packed dirt. Swirls of dust puff up and turn my rubber boots gray. I also felt that this passage was very melodic in its flow. It reads, Miss Hendrickson says that after lunch we will draw a picture of something we have seen, something we want to remember, to take it with us when we leave. In her book, she also uses varying sentence lengths and simplicities. For example, these sentences in this passage are fairly simple. It reads, I know this road, the one I am walking on. One end goes to the dam and the other steps at my school. I count the trailers on my side of the road. There are 7 and mine makes 8. Compared to this first sentence in this passage where it reads, I know the forest behind my home, where I play hide and seek in and out of the pine trees. The needle soft like a quilt under my feet. That sentence is a compound sentence, and it's longer and a little more complex. She also has a few pages in the book where it's just one sentence on the page with the illustration behind it. I think this really highlights the illustrations in the book. In her sequel From There to Here, Laurel uses an almost identical writing style to I Know Here. The sentences vary in length. For example, this is a very short passage. It reads, Here, Dad isn't home until supper. Mom calls it dinner now. The story is also filled with descriptive language such as, Here, there, we traveled in a pack, all the kids, so long as we could keep up, down our road, through the forest, past the creek, towards the hill, howling like wolves. Last one to the top is a dirty, rotten egg. This story is also pretty complex compared to some simpler ones. Every passage in this book begins with a one-word sentence. Most of it is here and there, but there's also this one that just says east. She also has varying sentence structure throughout. The Whirlpool is completely different from her other 2 books. This book is filled with short stories more suitable for older readers. All of the short stories in this book fall into the genre of realistic fiction. It's a Step uses incredibly emotional language throughout the story, as you can see in this passage. Here, it reads, You did what? He's raising his arms, his hands clenching into a fist. I take a couple of steps backwards. John, I hear my mom cry, don't. It is also filled with both short and long sentences like you see in this passage here compared to this passage. And in the book, the scenes in the book, there aren't very many pictures. They're broken up with these line breaks, as you see right here. Kate DiCamillo is a very successful American children's fiction author. She is one of 6 people to win 2 Newbery medals. As a child, DiCamillo suffered from a chronic pneumonia and credits her sickly childhood to having shaped her as a writer because she spent so much time alone in her bed imagining and observing. The first book she wrote is very famous. It's Because of Winn-Dixie. It later turned it into a movie. She has written very many different kinds of books, from chapter books to picture books, in varying genres. I will be going over 3 of her realistic fiction books, Bink and Gully, Big Birthday, and Bink and Gully 2 for 1. Her stories are most suitable for readers ages 6 to 9. Bink and Gully is the story of 2 best friends who experiences life's simple excitements together. What stood out to me about Kate's writing style is the story is the rich and descriptive language used throughout. In every single one of these passages, she uses very rich language. For example, as you can see, said Miss Fisherman, there are truly remarkable fish, spectacular in virtually every way, marvelous companions, marvelous, each one desperate for a good home. The words this author uses are longer than most of the words used in Laurel's books, I noticed. She uses the word compromise, perhaps, outrageous, implore, marvelous, spectacular, bonanza. In the book, the story is broken up into like 3 different stories, so it almost is like a short story book. Every different chapter, per se, has a page like this one in the background. Bink and Gully 2 for 1 is extremely similar in style to the first Bink and Gully book. This story also falls into the genre of realistic fiction. The picture on the left is taken from a scene in the book where Gully enters a talent show but experiences stage fright, something many children would be able to relate to. The story really highlights the girls' friendship, as you can see from these quotes. They read, "I see 2 friends, said Madame Prunelli. Is one of those friends tall? Said Gully. Yes, said Madame Prunelli. And is the other friend short? Said Bink. Yes, said Madame Prunelli. Are they together? Said Gully. Without question, said Madame Prunelli. The dialogue in this book is a little bit more simple than in the first Bink and Gully book. There aren't as many adjectives used throughout. It's pretty straight to the point. Big Birthday is a little different than the other 2 books I have mentioned. It is intended for a slightly younger audience, and it's about a little girl who wants to plan a spectacular birthday party, but things don't quite go as planned. Unlike the other books, this story rhymes and it uses simple words and sentence structure. For example, this zoo, she announced, is really quite a bore. I've been coming here for birthdays since I was 4, is an example of the rhyming throughout. And we're tired, said the children, and these games are too tough. These are all very simple words, and younger children would be able to, like when they're first starting to read, enjoy this book, I think. These 2 authors both use varying sentence length and structure in their stories, and they both have written stories that contain rich and emotional language. The authors have both utilized the technique of putting one sentence on the entire page to draw attention to the beautiful illustrations in the background. That being said, these authors are also different in many ways. Laurel is a Canadian author, while Kate is an American one. Laurel Croza is far less established as a writer than Kate DiCamillo. Kate has written more books and has won far more awards. I noticed that all of Laurel's books are written in the first-person narrative, whereas the stories I examined in Kate are all written in the third-person narrative. Kate's writing is far more developed as well. I think her stories flow a little better, and they contain more advanced language usage and techniques. Both authors have written great books and that are sure to delight any children who reads them.